This episode is brought to you by Portland Distro. If you love underground music and movies, go to portlanddistro.com. Thanks to everyone who has joined Patreon. We really appreciate it. I have to say that I'm humbled by the show of support, and it really means a lot to me. And, in April, like I said, we're going to make that donation. And, so your little bit helps. Number one, helps this show. And number two, helps people, deal with illiteracy in this country. So with that said, I'd like to thank Evan and Christian for joining. Cheers and welcome aboard. Good day, Ralph. How are you?
I'm okay, Mike. It's a very stormy day. It's a stormy Saturday afternoon, and I've just been through excruciating 2 weeks of grading papers and a lot of schoolwork because yesterday the kids got their term papers. So it's my first weekend where I don't have to work anything for school. So that's kind of chill.
Oh, that's good, man.
Yeah. How are you doing?
Doing okay. We're having a snowstorm right now. And it started snowing yesterday, and now it's like pretty full on. There's a lot of, I don't know, there's maybe about 4 inches of snow on the ground.
Bit late for a white Christmas, huh?
Yeah, it's the weather obviously is changing. Some people are arguing that global warming is not a thing, and I tend to disagree with that, and I don't know.
Well, then you're one of these sheeple, one of these sheeple.
Dude, I'm man, I'm so fucking tired of all this like partisanship and all this like, staunch lines being drawn, and it's just like denial of science, or even in having a lack of understanding of science at all. And and especially the mongoloids that are out there that are talking about science, who have no idea like what the fuck science really is either, Oh
man. Yeah, it's just like there's this I have this tradition that like on German TV on the first station, we have like the first, second, and third stations. They're like the official government stations, and then there are a lot of private stations. And the RRD, like the first German television, they have an institution called the Tagesschau, which is like the news, the basic daily news, and it's like on 8 p.m. until 8:15, and it's like my tradition to watch that. And like for years and years, I've been doing this, and for like the past months, I'm just like, I can't stand it. I just don't want to watch it anymore because it's politicians talking bullshit. It's like reports of people doing stupid things, and then Russia here and this and there. It's just like everything is so fucked, and I'm just like, dude, no, I'm too bummed out. I don't want to see this anymore.
I think in general, people are getting tired of just the news overload and the opinions and all this stuff and all this editorial that's going on. And I kind of stopped. I'm very measured in the amount of news I read every day. Like I'll scan the headlines. I mean, I still subscribe to the New York Times online, so I get headline notifications every morning. And I just get very selective about the stuff I read these days, and I don't want to go down any rabbit holes. And I have to say, even the New York Times, who is one of those very left-leaning publications that seem to be holding on with white knuckles to the pandemic, even they seem to be sort of optimistic about this thing declining in the next few months.
Yeah. At some point, like what they're trying to do here, like the prognoses are also that like in late summer, like most people will have been ill, and probably then we'll have like this mass immunity kind of thing and no more mutations. Another thing I read is like in 5 years, this thing will be contained. Other people are like, for the next 20 years, I will wear a mask in the subway, and I'm like, God, no. No, for me, like my world right now is I'm watching Fox News and I'm subscribing to Tucker Carlson. That's like he's my icon now.
Yeah, man. It's just funny, man, the whole thing. And I just try to like, I'm done, really. I got to be honest. Like I'm finished. I'm moving forward with my life, like
Yeah.
trying to book tours, trying to play shows again. We got
Yeah.
stuff coming up, and I'm just I'm ready, ready to roll. I
Yeah.
was ready last year, but
Yeah.
what are you gonna do?
It's so crazy how the divergence is like in the countries again. Like for sometimes I had the feeling that everybody was on board and like all the governments kind of went the same way. But now it's just like when I watch like everybody knows by now, I guess, it's like that I watch AEW wrestling and you see like these packed stations with like 10,000 people, 8,000 people, some of them wearing masks, most of them don't, and like they're doing their shit and concert videos are uploaded. And like in Britain now, like Boris Johnson, who was like, they found out that he had like parties while he was like telling everybody they can't have parties, so he had parties. And he's like stopping all the like measurements for like how to proceed. So masks will be no more thing if you want. Like it's just like on public buses, you have to wear a mask. Aside from that, everything is normal. But they're like current rate of like infections is gigantically high with Omicron, but there's just like, yeah, but it's not so difficult. And people here, everything's super strict, just schools stay open, everything else is shut down. And it's just so annoying. It's like, why can't it just be like one course and you believe in this? Everybody's doing their own shit and it's just annoying. And I don't know, man. Germany is really strict again, and I have no faith in anything of that anymore. Like I'm doing my own shit. I'm wearing my mask when I need it. Yeah, I'm just careful, and thank God I'm not the outgoing person. But like, as long as cinemas are still open, I'm good.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I I don't know. I was in New York City a couple days ago. And people are wearing masks on the streets. Like they're just going deep with that. In Manhattan, I mean, imagine if you go all the way out in Queens or Brooklyn, people are
Yeah.
probably not wearing masks anywhere. That's just kind of how it is. But the level of right wing ignorance seems to increase the further out you go in the boroughs. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
But in
Yeah,
Manhattan,
yeah,
there are
yeah.
people like wearing masks, and I'm just like, I don't know, that's a little extreme. Hey man, if you want me to wear a mask, that's cool. I'll put a mask on. I don't have a problem with that. I just that's not the hill I'm going to die on. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not going to start trouble if you want me to put a mask on, but I won't wear one, or I don't wear one, I should say.
Yeah.
All right, so
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
this week's episode, man, we're diving into probably one of our favorite musicians of all time, man. I know, speaking for myself, Rowland Howard is, man, I've always been a huge fan of all of his music, and I can even say that on a very, at least philosophical level, his guitar playing has influenced my playing as well on some level.
Yeah, and you're one of many, and he's like what I would call, like when I thought about this episode, I thought like we're doing a lot of these unsung heroes episodes. We had like an episode on Jeffrey Lee Pierce, who is kind of like a very influential musician, but never successful on a wide level. And then there's the Rowland Howard, and like I mean, we will go into the details of all the bands he's been in. There's so much music he did, and all of that stuff is incredible. And like you said, like his guitar playing is so unique. I would say he's the Australian Johnny Marr, except for Johnny Marr just did one thing, and like he had all these bands and brought so much to the world. But I thought about like, okay, where is he? And like for all our podcasts, like I thought of like Paul Westerberg of the Replacements for being like a songwriter extraordinaire and a lyricist, and Rowland S Howard was a great lyricist. And I think like the closest we get to him is Kid Congo Powers, that he's been in all the good bands.
Oh yeah, the Cramps, Gun Club, yeah, the list goes on with him too.
Yeah, and Roland's list is equally as amazing.
So for starters, Rowland Howard was born October 24th, 1959 in Melbourne, Australia, and passed away December 30th, 2009 in Heidelberg, Germany, which
No, wrong.
I'm
Sorry.
wrong. Where did he die? Where was
Yeah.
he then? Where did he die?
He died in Heidelberg, but Heidelberg, Australia.
Oh shit.
Yeah, because he at the end of his life he decided to go back to his family because he missed
Oh,
his
right, right, right,
mother,
right, right. Okay.
and he died. Yeah, and I was like confused, like, oh, cool, Heidelberg. I lived there. Like, I didn't know he died there because we already share the same birthday, except that he was 20 years older than I am. But no, he died in Heidelberg, Australia. Yeah.
Oh man. Wow. Okay. Well, I'm leaving that in because I also want to segue into the fact that Heidelberg is where you and I met in Germany, not in Australia.
Yes, correct.
Am I right about that, or am I wrong about that too?
No, Anodyne actually toured Australia, and I'm about to reveal that I was in Australia all the time.
The whole time I thought we were in Europe when we were in Australia.
I mean, as desolate as some places you played were, it could have been like the Outback, I guess, except for that it was shitty weather. When you played at Ex Steffi in Karlsruhe at 3 a.m. or something, and it was snowing outside for like 20 crust punks that didn't understand what Anodyne was doing. Yep, that was desolate.
Yeah, that's I still have like some PTSD, I think, from that European tour that Anodyne did. You know what I mean? It was definitely an experience, man, for sure. But you and I did meet in Heidelberg, Germany, and that was where we found each other in this desolate world, and we forged our friendship. So that's important to me, you know.
Yeah, right. So good enough. We'll keep it in. And it's just like, I was the same thing. It's like, dude, you died in Heidelberg? It's like, wow. And it's like, oh no, that's a thing in Australia. But the funny thing is, if you check it on Wikipedia, Heidelberg is linked as the German Heidelberg, but then it says in clusters Melbourne, Australia. And then I checked on the map, and it's actually just like a shitty small suburb of Melbourne.
Okay, all right, yeah. I mean, the German Heidelberg has like all these awesome castles and stuff like that in it. So
yeah. The story goes that in Mannheim, Germany, where you played that show, that's where I saw you the first time. Was that I think it was the first show of that tour because Ralph Bach booked it, and it was in Mannheim, his venue.
Yeah.
And dude, shit, I forgot where it come from. Damn. What were we talking about?
We were talking about Anodyne playing Mannheim, and that was the first show of that tour. And
right,
yeah, and that's where you I don't know if we met that night, but you were at the show.
No, because I saw you, and I was like, I wanted to say like, hi, I'm Ralph, and you guys will stay at my place for a few nights in a couple of days. But you guys looked so pissed, so I didn't talk to you.
Oh man.
Yeah, and I thought like, okay, this tour is already going great. Yeah.
Well, literally, that was like we had just arrived in Germany, man, on that morning, and you know the time change and not being able to sleep and being totally like shot as far as like our consciousness was going. It was it might have been a little grouchy that night, maybe.
Yeah, but I remembered what I wanted to say because Mannheim had like a lot of GIs. There was like this big army station, and like close to Heidelberg was another one. So the rumor is that like Freiburg, Germany, and Heidelberg, Germany are like two of the most beautiful cities you could go to in southern Germany. And they both weren't bombed in the Second World War because story goes that the GIs had a lot of girlfriends there, so they didn't bomb the place.
I can understand that. I find, I like that strong, European look myself. So yeah, I can understand not wanting to bomb the city, of Mannheim.
Yeah, but like Heidelberg is a beautiful place, and I mean, I remember I took you to the castle on the mountain. It's like between two mountains and the river Rhine going in between it. It's really picturesque. Yeah.
On the other side of that, Dresden was bombed into the ground during World War II, so that's a completely brand new city apparently.
Yeah, but they still have like some of the old buildings they restored, and they're beautiful. And Dresden is a fantastic city. It's really beautiful. Great to play shows there, but they have like one of the highest rates of right-wing idiots and anti-vaxxers. So if a German tour bus went for a Capitol riot to the States, they pretty much would come from Dresden. Yeah.
I think Kurt Vonnegut wrote about the bombing of Dresden. I forgot there was a Catch-22 maybe. Am I getting this wrong again?
Not sure.
Anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's yeah, I don't know. I remember when on that tour we had a date in Dresden, and I was thinking about how the city was completely destroyed during World War II.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of new buildings, but they've got like a really like a huge amount of old stuff, and they repaired a lot of that stuff and kept it. Yeah.
In this episode, we're going to talk about British people, I think, quite a bit. Just not. Hey, man, I got nothing but love for the UK.
Yeah.
Shout out to our buddy Jackie Smith, who actually is South African but lives in the UK, and
Yeah.
a lot of good people in England. But there's a British attitude that sort of is prevalent, especially if you come from the colonies like me, or from the former penal colony of Australia. So I feel like Australians and Americans, being former colonists, get the same sort of treatment in England. You know what I mean? So we'll talk about that later on in the episode, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny that you said like South Africa is like, do you remember the quote from Henry Rollins about how Rollins' guitar sound is in the Autoluminescent documentary?
He said a lot of great things about Rowland Howard, about his
Yeah.
the heart being punctured in several places, and his songs weighing more because of the weight of blood and all this stuff. But I don't recall specifically what he said about his guitar style, though.
He said like his weeping guitar sounds like an African aborigine with no, not aborigine, like an African native with malaria trying to make his guitar sound like he feels. So,
Interesting.
that's like yeah.
Well, let's that's a good point, because Rowland Howard has a very distinct guitar style, but it wasn't always so. Like when his earlier bands, there's other bands that he had. There was Tutho and the Ring, The Obsession, but the Young Charlatans were probably the first significant band that he did, and because that was when he wrote Shivers, which was which ended up being a Boys Next Door hit single, at least in Australia. But that the material that the Young Charlatans played was pretty much pop oriented, vaguely psychedelic, like rock. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
kind of very, very. I hate to say ordinary, but it followed like typical song structures, a verse, chorus, bridge, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, his favorite band by that time was Television, and I mean he was 16 by that time. So like you can find it on Spotify, but there's like stuff on there on YouTube, or like you find like obscure blogs, and also like Mike and I will reference the documentary Autoluminescent about Rowland S Howard, which all of you out there, if you don't have it and you can't get it on DVD like I do, you can buy it for €2.50 on Vimeo. You can watch it in HD quality, and it's well spent €2.50. And yeah, like you can hear some stuff by the Young Charlatans, and I mean that dude was 16. My bands when I was 16 didn't sound as good as they did.
Yeah, he's one of those, geniuses, in my opinion. I mean, if you think about Rowland Howard and Ian Curtis, Ian Curtis wrote all the Joy Division stuff before he was 23 years old.
Yes.
And with this like totally world weary sensibility and that that voice that he had, it's just those lyrics. The weight of the world was on that guy's shoulders, and the same thing with Rowland Howard. The sheer output and sophistication of his abilities at the young age of 16. Like, I don't even think I knew how to play 3 chords when I was 16 years old.
Yeah. And it's funny that you mentioned Joy Division, because like when you read books about Joy Division or watch the movie, like there's a bunch of documentaries, and I guess probably most of you out there will have watched Control, which I still to this day like a lot. The attitude that Ian Curtis had, that like, okay, like I'm becoming the best singer ever, and I will be the best frontman ever, without ever having proven anything. So before he could like put his money where his mouth is, he already was like really cocky about it. And that's what the people said about Rowland Howard when he was in the Young Charlatans, that he went to other bands and said like, I don't like your band, but I like your talent. And like diminishing them already before they could kind of, we were like, dude, like who the fuck are you? You didn't do jack shit. And I mean, the Young Charlatans pretty much were a good band, but that morphed into the Boys Next Door. And like you said, the Shivers was his song that he brought to the table, which became a real, like a big hit that has been covered a lot of times.
Yeah, there's a video on YouTube of Boys Next Door, you know, like a rock video, you know, of them playing it.
Yeah.
But
and it's
But you know, the Boys Next Door would become the Birthday Party. Like it was basically the same lineup, you know. But stylistically, there was a huge difference in sound and approach to the music. Yeah, like I was saying earlier, like at some point in the Birthday Party when they transitioned, that's when Rowland Howard really developed his sound, like that angular, creepy, distant sound that he had.
Yeah. Before we go into the Birthday Party, because I think that's like one of the two biggest things in his career. Like they have a lot of good bands, but like two things are definitely the ones that like people associate with Rowland Howard. It's when the Young Charlatans transformed into the Boys Next Door, Nick Cave was in that band, and for the song Shivers, Nick Cave live played the guitar and Rowland sang it. But at some point, Nick Cave developed this, like, also this poshness. And then there was the discussion, and he said, like, to quote, that's what he said in documentary, I'm the singer and I will sing the songs. So they recorded Shivers in a version where Nick Cave sang it, and I really like this. But now in retrospect, in the documentary, Nick Cave says, I shouldn't have sung this song. It was his song, and I could never do it justice. Couldn't do it back then. Even with my ability now, I couldn't do it because this was such a personal song. And he says, like, right now, I believe that Rowland Hood should have sung this on the record.
Well, let's stay on this Shivers thing for a minute, because I got a couple of notes here about it too. And that was kind of like Nick Cave and Rowland were almost diametrically opposite in their approach to music in some ways. I mean, in the documentary, they talk about how Rowland Howard was kind of fascinated with Nick Cave's like barbaric sort of loudishness, you know, and Nick Cave, in my impressions of his approach, was definitely more this like visceral, kind of like focusing more on depravity, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then Rowland Howard was like the romantic, you know, with like some ironic lyrics and things like that. And I actually prefer, like they have pieces of the Rowland Howard version in the documentary, and I actually do like his version better than the Nick Cave version.
Yeah, that's like, I mean, I just knew the Shivers version of like the Boys Next Door, and for 2 years it was the only Boys Next Door song on Spotify, for example. I have a bootleg copy of the Door record, and it's a great record, but it's like, you see, like, this is a very young Nick Cave. He didn't know what to do, and it was prior to heroin, and but like a good band. And then it's like, okay, so he sang this, and I heard it like in the documentary, and I'm like, it's so much more authentic in a way. But as much as like Rowland Howard was impressed by Nick Cave's savagery, like Nick Cave said that he came, like, that Rowland Howard was the total package. He got to know him, and he already had a clear view of how he wanted to look, how he wanted to play, how his bands should sound, and that's something that really impressed me, because for me right now, when we started Ropes of Night, I knew how this band should look and how this band should sound. But I'm 42 now, and started like when I was 40. Ulfa had like took some time to develop, but this guy was 17 or 16, and he knew what he wanted to do. And like when you see early footage right up until the end, he always had the same style. He played the same guitar through the same amp. He just used it in different forms for the different bands he was in. And that's something I completely bow my head to. Like that's amazing.
Yeah, and if you dig into the lyrics too, it's even like the songs that Roland wrote have like definitely more, I would say almost more literary, like this use
Yeah,
of irony and things like that. And Nick Cave's like lyrics are more just like, it's a wild world, hey, like very,
mm,
very, you know, primal. And
yeah,
even the opening line to Shivers, I've been contemplating suicide, but it just doesn't fit my style.
yeah,
It's like, I don't know, it's just so good. And apparently that song was written as an ironic response to the extremity of young love, like, because,
yeah,
he was 16 when he wrote the song. So even at that age, he was observing how people reacted to these, in the big picture, probably very minor relationship, sort of sagas.
yeah.
And by observing how serious people took that, he came up with the song Shivers. And I thought that's a pretty brilliant thing. I don't think I clearly didn't have any ability at that age to be that ironic about anything, and I just think
Yeah.
that's, the sign of like a musical genius, in my opinion.
Yeah, totally. Because he could do it all. He could write songs, he could play, he could perform, and he could write lyrics. And he talks about like how much the English language is fascinating to him, and that through Nick in the Cave, he found more literature that he just observed and you just he soaked it in, and like they had a lot of discussions about it, and where like he said like his own songs that he writes for himself, they're always like heartbroken love songs from his stabbed heart, where he started later on writing more absurdist lyrics for the other people in his band singing the lyrics, for example for Nick Cave. But in general, like the whole dynamic, especially in the early part of his musical career between Nick Cave and him and girls, is very fascinating. That like people said about him, he like Rowland Howard was always in love with girls who weren't in love with him. And at some point, like there's this girl Anita Lane they talk about, and like she came to a party and Roland saw her and he was immediately in love. But Nick got to talk to her, and he said like at the end of the party they were a couple, and so there was always this anxiety and this jealousy in a way, which like was a kind of a friendly rivalry for sometimes. But there's always a girl, and always Nick Cave and him, and they like had what one was together with them, like they were a couple, and then they broke up, and then they were best friends, and the other came like were in a relationship with them. So that's very tense, like as a camaraderie. Like you're in a band together and you're like in love with the same girls, and then the girl you love is in love with the other guy. And through all of this, you gain some success with your band and you're a big name. And then you decide to break it all away and go to go to Britain, go to England.
Yeah, and that was interesting because I think Roland Howard is the one who says that they had this perception that people that lived in other countries had had some different level of sophistication that was lacking in Australia. But when they arrived at in England, in London, it was a complete disappointment, disenchantment, apparently.
Yeah.
And at the time they arrived, that's when all this like kind of shoegazy stuff was happening, and they stated in this documentary about how they were just really disappointed that no one really appreciated them, and not only that, the press was really brutal, because they were, England, in my perception of England, they've always been very prone to following trends, and especially like in the mainstream. I'm not talking necessarily about underground stuff really. But the mainstream press people that would cover music were very flavor of the month, and the fact that the birthday party with this kind of like hard rocking band with this like image and very dark, it just didn't jive with what was happening at the time in England.
Yeah. And especially like the decision to like they just found out about heroin. I'm bringing this topic up a lot, but it's just like that's because in the end, like this is one of the key things that changed him and changed them. And drugs were a big problem in the life of Rowland Howard, especially in the end when he like understood how much it affected him. But like they decided to move to the UK from Australia, and they didn't have any money, and so they lived together in an apartment with like sometimes with 10 people, they say. And you come from a background where your band is kind of a popular thing, and you play shows to like hundreds of people, and you go over there, no one gives a shit about you. And then you're there, you're disoriented, and you're like, okay, so what the fuck now? We believe in what we do, but no one gives a shit. And then NME, like the New Musical Express, that's a music thing that I think no other country in that form has. We all knew music magazines, but like almost daily newspaper with a new hit band or hit band every day. That's something I've never heard of except for like New Musical Express. And then they start and they decide like, oh no, like it's fumbling here. Let's try the US. And they went on the US tour and they played 3 shows in New York. And I mean, they played, like I said, a total of 25 people over 3 shows, got booted off stage like after 10 minutes at the first show, played to 1 person at the second show. And the 3rd person at the Ritz, they made a show, like they played for 25 minutes and then they got booted off the stage again.
I thought it was funny. They were talking about the show that one person came to. It was like some Polish girl that they said they'd put on the guest list. It's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, but then again, like a year later, they played to 2,000 people.
Yeah, I mean that's what happens when you're ahead of your time like this, man. It's let's talk about their music a little bit, because I don't think, no one was really, if anyone was doing anything remotely similar to what they were doing, no one was getting it. I mean, the whole entirety of their career existed between 78 and 83. So, they weren't a punk hardcore band. So they weren't doing that early, hardcore style, which was big in the early 80s. So they were like these like outliers. Like I can't even imagine what bands they would play with, like in the United States. Like, the Swans.
Yes,
were that's probably the only U.S. band I can think of that was similar to them, and they weren't, filling rooms either. They were doing the same thing. People were being alienated by them, and at that stage, it was very much this like, dark, very not commercial thing, And they also had this attitude of trying to really incite the crowd, and that's what happened in their New York shows. There was he referred to the Ritz as this like mafia style like club, which I thought was really funny. I never felt that way about the Ritz, but I mean I've only been there like once, and it wasn't until like 1986, 87. And yeah, it was just they were being accused of trying to start riots at the shows, and they had this very confrontational attitude.
Yeah. I mean, one band that comes to mind where you could think like they'd probably be the band they could have played with, Sonic Youth, but Thurston Moore, like they talked about the first shows they played together was like with these Immortal Souls.
Yeah.
So they were like, I guess I'm not a Sonic Youth fan. Never got it. Like 2 or 3 songs cool, but like I'm not a fan. But you can clearly hear from their style how they play and what they do that they. I mean, Thurston Moore is in that documentary next to Kevin Shields and Bobby Gillespie of Primal Scream, the Jesus and Mary Chain guys. Yes. All these people were influenced by Rowland's guitar play. And like with Sonic Youth, you can clearly see like they stole a lot of tricks from his book.
So I was actually going to ask you what your feelings are about Sonic Youth, because I'm not a fan either. I mean, I have a few of their records, but I wouldn't say that I'm a fan of their music.
Yeah. There's this when I grew up, like we talked about this on earlier episodes, like I'm that kid that's like VCR, like DVR, like I don't know like how it is. I programmed my video recorder to like record Headbangers Ball in 120 minutes, Yo MTV Reps. So in 120 minutes, there was pretty much no week without a feature on Sonic Youth. I loved Nirvana when they came out, and I saw this the year that punk broke, where they toured with Sonic Youth, and I always like appreciated them for like the thing they did, but they always, I don't know, like they never felt like a band that I wanted to like because they were just so unsympathetic. And I have total respect for their body of work, and there's some songs that are great, and sometimes I wish I could be a fan, but they never clicked with me.
The only songs I like are the ones that Kim Gordon sings, to be honest.
Oh,
You know, I mean, I think I have the feeling that I would probably dislike Thurston more if I were to ever have to spend time with him. You know,
yeah,
and I met some of the what the hell, Bob Burke, the guy who ended up being
yeah,
in the Chrome Cranks. Not a
hmm,
fan of him either, man. You know, it's like
yeah,
I don't know. I just I mean, there's a handful of songs I like by them. Like I like Death Valley '69. You know, it's kind of cool. Like pretty cool video, whatever. But
yeah,
by and large, I'm not a big fan of their music. You know, but yeah, they were like the bubblegum version of good bands. I think. You know, like for example, the
yeah.
Swans. Swans. I picked them over Sonic Youth. Sonic Youth is like a more palatable version of the Swans or maybe the Birthday Party and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. When I like started listening to all this music, that was when Dirty came out in '92, and so you had the video for Youth Against Fascism, which I to this day think is a great song and a good video, and Sugar Cane. Um, but then it's like I bought I remember like back then I just bought all the records that I got, and like it has 100%. That song is also great, but it's not nothing I really put on a whole lot. Like I did mixtapes back then. I was big on like for myself
Yeah.
because I didn't have any friends that understood the music. But I also like tapes, like live recordings with my like cassette player in front of the TV and recorded like I don't know, like Cannibal Corpse at Headbangers Ball or stuff like this. Um, and did mixtapes with that. And I like there was always a Sonic Youth song on there next to Therapy and all these bands. But it's the same with Dinosaur Jr. They never did anything for me. Like, well,
Yeah, I probably like Dinosaur more than I like Sonic Youth because like there's like
yeah,
a handful of Dinosaur Jr. songs I really really like, and I've seen I've seen him play a bunch of times, and but yeah, then
yeah.
honestly at the end of the day, none of that stuff has any real meaning for me between those two bands.
So totally off topic, but what's your feeling on the Pixies?
Love them. I love the Pixies actually.
All right. Ah,
You know they always all their records for the most part were on major labels. I mean, they were like a huge commercial band. You know what I mean?
ah,
And I like them quite a bit. I still listen to them, man. I still listen to like a lot of their music these days. And I thought they were great songwriters. Great. I think if pop music sounded like the Pixies, that would be satisfying to me.
yeah, for me, they're always the alternative Beatles in a way
Sure.
because the songwriting is just so good. It's good that I'm really glad that you say this because I love them and I wanted to pitch the idea in our circle of like Jeffrey Lee Pierce, Paul Westerberg, now Rowland S Howard, and we should do one on Frank Black.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, totally. Bob Mould, I would throw in there too. Yeah.
Oh, definitely,
Yeah.
yes.
But back to the Birthday Party. That is a band that man, I continue to listen to them and find different nuances in their music, and yeah, so that's obviously there's a huge reach, and you know they have influenced like tons of other musicians and a more newer band, quote unquote newer, even though they've been around for over 10 years, but is really
Yeah.
starting to become more of a force commercially is a band that you and I both really like, Bambara. I feel like they are
Yes.
direct disciples of the Birthday Party in some ways.
Totally. Like the way they play live, their energy, also that the bass is the main driving force and the guitars is doing textures of noise on top, and they're so unique in what they do. And then when I saw them the first time supporting Nothing, I was like, Bambara, what's that kind of name? And then I saw them play, and I was after one song, I was a fan, and that hasn't happened in years. And ever since then, Bambara is one of my favorite bands out there right now. And we just like at the Ropes of Night rehearsal yesterday, we talked about them, and like Martin, our guitar player, said like Bambara is the pop distillate of pop of the Birthday Party, because the Birthday Party had moments of clarity, and mostly they were like destroyed noise in a way. And Bambara writes hits, but in the construct of like Birthday Party method.
Yeah, no, totally, man. And I think that's a powerful combination for them. And I'm really, really looking
Yep.
forward to them. And anyone out there who hasn't listened to it yet, I interviewed Reed from Bambara last year, or, you know, I don't know, at some point over the last couple of years. So there's an episode on Everything Went Black that if you dig Birthday Party and Bambara, you should check it out. We talk about all that
Yes.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So Birthday Party was pretty much born in the UK and then did this stuff because like it was the step away from the Boys Next Door. And it was just like Rowland Howard said about himself that back then he kind of found something in him that wanted out, a lot of anger and frustration. And he says about himself that like the heartbroken love songs that he used to write and later on wrote again, they were completely not there. And it was just like, it was just pure force and pure agony. And that's what he just experimented with pedals and put them together in the weirdest way and just like made noise without ever really touching the guitar, but was able to make like almost ambient soundscapes in noise without like actually using a pick or something. And that's art. And he even made that work. He can write the most tender, beautiful love songs, and he made the harshest noise out there and still made it beautiful.
Just real quick, I want to address like the UK again. And look, man, anyone out there in the UK, love, man, just nothing but love for the UK. But being from the colonies out here in the United States, it's like there's definitely a thing, man, and I feel it going to England, and I'm sure the Birthday Party felt the same way. Also, being colonists, like from Australia, the UK make you feel like an outsider, man. They very much so. If you're doing something creative and trying to take it to them. I don't know how many times I've had conversations, not so much in Tombs, but like when Anodyne, actually, wait, now it had to be when Tombs. Anodyne actually never played in England. Oh no, maybe it was with Otis. Yeah, even back in the 90s. So we did some shows in England on that tour at Fetus, and it was like, talking with the British people about like how they created punk rock music and they created heavy metal and they created everything over there, and we're just like pale fucking imitations of all the stuff that they do and all that. And I'm just like, I don't agree with any of that stuff because, let's face it, man, punk rock music was created in the US of A, man. You know what I mean? Like, even like the whole, Stooges, all that stuff, man, like the 50s, the Chuck Berry, like all that stuff is what contributed into creation of punk rock music. Even like, the Ramones, like all that stuff harkens back to or girl groups, the essence of punk music as a style of 20th century art was, in my opinion, and I believe I'm correct on this, was all started in the United States. And that's just the way it goes. Nothing against England, man. You guys got your things, like you got to figure out the food over there a little bit better for me personally. And you got to, I'm not a big fan of tea myself, but that's just kind of how I see it,
Yeah, I'm backing you on this. It's like, they can, the British can say like with the Damned New Rose, they have the first single that was actually called a punk record.
Yeah.
They had like the big hype about the Sex Pistols, a band I never really cared for, and like from them, they're the problem. Like Sex Pistols to me is what was the problem with punk later on. Like was all image and no substance. Yeah. And I think a lot of the American punk bands that like quote unquote called themselves punk, they actually had something to say and did something. I love the Damned. Like the Damned are a great band. Like them better when they got the gothy touch. Dave Vanian, still one of my favorite frontmen of all time. A lot of great British punk bands out there. Undertones and all these bands, Buzzcocks, super important. But I'm also like Birth of It, America, best punk bands, also America.
And I love many, many British, some of my favorite bands like Joy Division, Bauhaus, Motorhead. Yeah. These are my favorite. Iron Maiden, UFO. Yeah. These are all some of my favorite bands of all time. So I'm not trying to slam the UK. I'm just trying to say, there's a thing, there's like a stiff upper lip that they seem to have. And I find that, sometimes it makes me defensive, I guess,
Yeah. Yeah. And when they had enough of the UK, they made the move. A lot of bands do. And I know bands that I love that moved from New Zealand to Berlin. They moved from Britain to Berlin. from Sweden to Berlin, and even from like in Germany, like complete bands try to find luck going to Berlin. It's the mecca of music in a way. To me, still a difficult city. Like all the shows we ever played there with all my bands have been great. We've always got a lot of love there. Whenever I walk around Berlin, I feel like a complete alien. And I mean, I'm a guy that sticks out because like I'm 6'6" tall. I always wear black. I'm tattooed, and still there, I look like the palest person in the world because everybody's so over the top. And yeah, trends go there and get absorbed. And yeah, a lot of, especially again, here I go with the drug topic. Bands like Soft Moon, not Soft Kill. But like the guy, he moved from the US to Berlin, and he said like I had to leave Berlin, otherwise I would have died because of all the drugs I did. And the funny thing is that like Wim Wenders, like the famous filmmaker, and we will address his movie, that super important story of Roland. He said that like before the birthday party came to Berlin, people were doing speed and were trying to be punk. And then they brought heroin and Jaguar guitars to Berlin, and that changed everything because everybody wanted to be Rowland S Howard or Nick Cave.
Yeah, Berlin's awesome, man. Like I've been, I think the first time I went to Berlin was like 1995 maybe. And yeah, it was a trip, man. Especially I'd never been to Europe before, and that was like one of the standout cities on that whole run over there. Ironically, I saw Ice-T perform in Berlin on that on that first night I was there. We played with Fetus and Bark Market, and in the same venue in a larger room, Ice-T was playing. So obviously we just went over to check him out, and that was a lot of fun.
Berlin is such a universe in itself. I mean, when you like for all you out there who haven't been to Berlin, Berlin is so unlike all the other German cities. It's so tall, like it's so large that like you could play. It's pretty much comparable to New York. You could play like 3 shows in Berlin in different parts of the town, and you won't have the same people at the show. And like to go from one side of Berlin to the other by public transportation will take you 2 hours. So it's larger than any other city in Germany. And when you drive there, you pass a lot of towns, and typically like from here where I live, you pass Leipzig and all these towns. And then there's like a desolate wasteland, and you're just like always approaching Berlin, and it takes you an hour to approach and come, like you pass Potsdam, and then you're in Berlin. And then when you're in Berlin, it will still take you 50 minutes by car to get where you want to go.
Yeah, it's a very comparable to New York. I think, definitely. Berlin and Hamburg remind me of New York style cities. Just Hamburg more for like the sleaze element of it. Yeah, one of the more notable things in Berlin also is a wall used to divide the city, between east and west, and that's always like a interesting thing to check out when you go there.
Yeah, like also one of the cornerstones of our history together is that I recorded some video footage in front of the Berlin Wall singing David Bowie's Heroes for you. Yeah.
Sometime I want to, there's actually no formal release of that song.
Yeah.
There's just a video. Yeah. And there's 2 versions of that song too, actually.
Yeah.
There's 2 different mixes, and at some point I want to release that as part of something like a B-side. But that was great, man. Like Heroes by David Bowie was like, I always associated those 2 things, the Berlin and that song. I think it goes back to me watching a film called Christian F, like back when I was in high school, which took place in Berlin, and coincidentally had to do with heroin addiction, which I guess we can blame the birthday party for bringing heroin to Berlin.
At least to the music scene, and Christiane F wasn't like the music associate, but like that's, I think, as much as like the crack epidemic in New York, and this is something that people always connect. And to me, like the 80s music scene and heroin in Berlin kind of go hand in hand. Yeah.
So this is actually an important part of the history here, because this is actually where the birthday party disbanded and Nick Cave met Blixa Bargeld from Neubauten. And that was like the seeds of the bad seeds. There we go. The seeds of Nick Cave and the bad seeds.
Yeah.
But then before all that happened, or actually after that, while they were still in Berlin, Rowland Howard joins Crime and the City Solution. And
Yes.
he was only in the band for a period. You know, he wasn't like a founding member of that outfit. And that was essentially Simon Bonney, the vocalist. He was that was kind of his band.
Yes.
And Mick Harvey, another member of the birthday party, and Roland joined this band. And what's the cool thing about it? You mentioned Wim Wenders and his incredible film, Wings of Desire, which is the English title of the film he made. And he's featured, I guess the German. I mean, you should say the German title.
Yeah. For all you ignorant German people out there, for you, it's Der Himmel über Berlin, the classic Wim Wenders movie with Bruno Ganz. One of the best movies ever made, in my opinion. Yeah.
Is that Heaven Over Berlin?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that film has Bruno Ganz in it, who also would eventually play Adolf Hitler later on, and Solveig Dalmartin, which is she looks amazing. Like, actually, you know, it's funny. You know, this came out in 1987. All right, and you know, the things that I found in that period in the 80s continued through the entirety of my life. Like the influences of listening to like Bauhaus and the Birthday Party and movies like Wings of Desire and, you know, Solveig Dalmartin, you know, her look in that film. And it's just that all of that stuff really informed the things that I would be attracted to or found interesting or got gravitated towards. And just the whole style of this movie was so influential on me. The black and white, you know, the whole vibe. And it features a performance of Six Bells Chime by Crime and the City Solution with Rowland Howard on stage. And it's kind of an iconic, you know, scene, really.
Yeah, it's amazing. I have to say, I mean, we will get into favorite songs later on, but I think Six Bells Chime is my favorite song that Rowland Howard was involved in, and especially the performance in black and white on stage. It, like the coolness of that, playing in this old industry building, which is to me totally Berlin, to play in these abandoned industrial shacks. Especially like when you tour Europe and you play, like you're not a band that plays like the proper venues, but you do like DIY tours and you're used to playing squats and these places. If you go to like Leipzig, Dresden, Chemnitz, Berlin, and Potsdam, these are the kind of venues that you will play. And this, to me, the whole look of it is so distinctly Berlin, and it fits so well together. And Wim Wenders said, like, when he met them, like the birthday party, they were still together, and then he saw like how they disbanded because Nick was fed up singing the lyrics of Rowland S Howard, and like the musical tastes diverged, and so they decided to break it up. And like Mick Harvey like brought the news to Rowland S Howard, but he already said like, I wonder why I didn't do this earlier. But yeah, Wim Wenders said, like, for me it was a win-win, because all of a sudden you had Nick Cave in the backseats and you had Crime and the City Solution, like two bands in town that were amazing. So he had to have both of them in the movie. So they were all still on good terms. And but he said, like, when they came to Berlin and brought like not only heroin but like also the looks, he said like they were like vampires. They disappear during day and they come out at night. And then it shows like a scene of Dr. Caligari, and it's just like, yeah, that's really accurate. Yeah. And when we talked about this before, it's like, this is the look that got me into goth and this shit. this show Der kleine Vampir, so the little vampire, this German Canadian co-production, that was in TV in the early 80s. And kids like in this youth camp in summer, there were like these older French kids that were like 16, and they had like these long coats and like pointy leather boots and the spiky hair, doing pogo to Boys Don't Cry. And I was the chubby kid into New Kids on the Block back then. I'm like, oh man, I have to change something. And yeah, this whole look, that's really still to this day, it gets me. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's funny you mentioned getting into goth music. Like when I was in high school, I had a girlfriend who was, you know, like we were all into like punk and everything, and she was like definitely more on the goth side, and it kind of exposed me to The Cure and that kind of thing. And The Cure was cool, but Bauhaus was what really turned me on to that stuff when I saw The Hunger, and there's that, well, the Peter Murphy, you know, they're in it behind a cage and all this stuff, and the vampire stuff's going on, and everyone's wearing dark glasses inside. And where the Cure always seemed like a little soft to me at the time, Bauhaus seemed like evil and dangerous, you know. And later after that, that's when I discovered The Birthday Party, and I was like, oh, look at these guys, even more evil and dangerous, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, that just kind of you know, the long coats, the trench coats, and everything. When I was 18, I used to toy with that look a little bit, you know, with the long coat and everything, you know, the boots.
I mean, if I could, like, speaking of The Hunger, if I could regulate my hunger better, I probably could be like a Slender Man, like these guys too. But dude, they're like skinny warriors, man. It's like like Nick Cave and Rowland S Howard together are not as heavy as I am. And like, this is the cool, like they didn't wear beards, like they had spiky hair, no beard, and they were slim, and something I could never pull off. But like, it's something to me, like the visual aspect always gripped me. And like, to go back to the Berlin thing is, I actually started watching. I saw the first episode of Yellow Jackets yesterday because I was bored, and like it's okay, but like the distinct look of suburban America is so typical. The houses with the flags and the 7-Elevens and all this shit, and it's just like when you look at movies taking place in Germany, mostly they all look the same. Good example, The Golden Glove. Like the movie, like a really gruesome but really good movie. I recommend to people out there. It's like typical Hamburg, the red light district, but it looks really German. But if you look at movies that are like placed in Berlin, like for example, like Wim Wenders Himmel über Berlin, or The Possession, one of my all-time favorite horror movies. Possession plays in Berlin. The remake of Suspiria plays in Berlin too, and I unapologetically like this movie. And just the setting, like these buildings, that's so typical. And I think only Berlin really looks like this, or at least like Eastern Germany, but Berlin in especially. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? I actually like the Suspiria remake too. I mean, it's okay to like both films. I think, you know.
For me, they're completely different movies.
Yeah.
But like when I saw it, it's just visually so stunning, and the soundtrack and everything is great about this. And again, it has like the setting, the look. By the way, did you ever see Possession by now?
I got to see that, man. I definitely I haven't seen it yet. No.
Yeah, dude, like oh man, you will love that movie. And we need to do an episode about this because I totally love that movie, dude, too. Yeah.
I have to make it a point to see that. I'm embarrassed that I haven't seen it.
Yeah. So Wim Wenders made this movie, and Simon Bonney moved to Berlin, and he said, like, Roland, I want to have you in that band. So he decided to join the band, but after like not even being in the band for a long time, just recording that one record he's on, he already felt like he's in a cage, and he felt restricted and restrained in what he can do. So he decided to leave the band, and Simon Bonney moved to the US. And I mean, Crime and the City Solution has like a bunch of lineups. There's one lineup that involves David Eugene Edwards of Woven Hand on a later record. which is also great. But like Crime the City Solution is a band that every record has a different sound and a different style. And funny enough, they just announced that this year they will release a new record and they will tour, and that two members of the birthday party are in Crime the City Solution now in the new lineup.
Oh, I didn't know that. Who's in it? Is it like McHarvey or something like that? Or
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it's like, and the other dude, like, yeah.
he was in the band back in the '80s for a minute. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they just like posted it this week that they posted 2 weeks ago that they have a new lineup and they will do a new record and will go on tour. And then he posted a picture of the birthday party, and he said like, yeah, two of these guys are in Crime the City Solution now.
Cool. But the whole time during this period, this early period of Rowland S Howard's career, I felt like he was being suppressed in some ways, because I think that the true expression was when he's singing, and it wasn't since the Young Charlatans that he was actually doing vocals. And then now he moves into his own with These Immortal Souls, where it's his band. He's fully able to express himself. And yeah, that's like in some ways, it's almost like the beginning for him,
Yeah. Yeah. They recorded just 2 records, Get Lost, Don't Lie in '87, and I'm Never Gonna Die Again. Both records excellent. It's so 100% Rowland S Howard, and it's his style, it's his vocals, and you can really hear it, how free he felt doing this. And from there, it was like he did a lot of stuff like collaborations with Nikki Sudden and with Lydia Lynch, and he moved to New Orleans, and he was free then. Finally, after all this time, he wasn't as estranged. And I don't want to jump the gun. I don't know, like, if you have something to say about These Immortal Souls, I assume you like them too, right?
Oh yeah, no, this is great. I mean, this is honestly, I feel like, as much as I love the birthday party, if I want to look at like Rowland S Howard as his own man, his own entity, this is where I would start, But before we move on, like those other footnote bands, like the Nikki Sudden collaborations and Lydia Lunch, there was also a short-lived thing that was kind of like a birthday party go-betweens collaboration, which we should have mentioned earlier, called the Tough Monks, that only had like a 7-inch that came out, like a single. It's actually a pretty good song, and I put that in the playlist actually, so you guys can check that out.
Yeah, spoiler, we've got a playlist, and I added some songs this morning, shuffled it up a bit, and there's 40 songs in there now.
Good.
And that's how much good stuff this man has released over the years.
Yeah, I think that in general, based on some of the feedback, that people don't mind the long playlists. It kind of gives them like, people that have contacted me about the playlists, they seem to like the longer formats with those.
Yeah, especially here where it's so much stuff that is. And I think that's the cool thing, because like I mixed up the songs, so it's not like this band 5 songs, this band 5 songs, but it's like a real shuffle from the get-go. And the cool thing is, for all of you out there, if you listen to it, you will always hear that it's Rowland S Howard that wrote and played these songs. No matter who's singing, no matter which time frame, but it's always 100% him.
Yeah, definitely. Now, as much as I like These Immortal Souls, I have to say that my favorite stuff, if you were just going to go straight like Rowland Howard, would have to be his solo records that he put out.
Yep.
And
I'm there with you. Yeah.
The first one was Teenage Snuff Film in 1999. And then in 2009, 10 years later, he put out Pop Crimes, which is, in my opinion, just a perfect fucking record, man.
It is. It absolutely is. It's so good. And I mean, I love Talk Talk, and I give people shit that try to cover Talk Talk, but what he made of Life, It's Life What You Make It, is amazing. Yeah.
The Teenage Snuff Film also has a couple of covers on it too. It's got White Wedding, of all songs, by Billy Idol.
Yeah.
And it has a Shangri-La's cover, She Cried.
Yeah.
Which it's a great song too. Even the Shangri-La's. I mean, the Shangri-La's. Quick aside: when I was young, I listened to before I discovered rock music, like modern rock music. I listened to a lot of that was like the kind of the formative stuff for me was like 50s girls group and rockabilly and that kind of thing.
Oh. And as much as I love how Roland's guitar playing, I'm also a sucker because that was my first instrument, is the bass guitar. And like through all these bands, there was always great bass players that had like a distinct tone, especially like in the birthday party. And he was what kept all the stuff together. And I have to say, like the bass riff on the song Pop Crimes and the sound of that bass, that's like a wet dream to me. I love just the way this record sounds, and this bass riff is so good. Yeah, great record. I still don't own it on vinyl. I need to get that.
I have it on vinyl, but for a long time, I remember it wasn't available on vinyl, at least not in the United States.
Yeah, I assume like I still need to like score Room of Lights of Crime in the City Solution and the Roland solo stuff. So I guess I'll address my old friend Discogs. Yeah.
When Pop Crimes came out in 2009, I remember I had just moved into this new place in Greenpoint in Brooklyn, and actually you visited me there. You were
Yes,
in
correct.
that apartment, that loft I lived in, and
Yeah.
there used to be a record store just around the block called Permanent Records, and became very good friends with the owner, and would go in there all the time. And that was the first time I heard Pop Crimes. Like she was playing it in there, and I was like, "Oh man, this is like sounds like Rowland Howard." And she's like, "Yeah, it's the brand new pop record he just put out, Pop Crimes." And
Oh man.
immediately bought it, and always this record always makes me think about that time, like that period when I lived there, and it was before it became like this place, like a destination. Like everyone wondered why I moved to Greenpoint, and I was like, that's why I moved to Greenpoint, because you wonder why I moved there, But yeah, it's such a great record. It's probably one of my go-to records, and he passed away shortly after. So there is this kind of finality, to it when you listen to
Yeah.
it. It seems like, and apparently from what I've read, he made this record knowing that he probably didn't have much longer to live.
Yeah.
And that gives it this extra edge, in some ways.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, his lifestyle eventually caught up to him with some illnesses, and he tried to get clean and he tried to get better, and he was in a better place. Got married again, had a kid, and all over the years, and yeah, he was in a better place, but then he had a relapse, and then like right in the end, he said like, oh no, like I have to get clean now, and he got to a better place. He had a new girlfriend after the breakup with his wife. He was happy, and they said like it looked good, and then all of a sudden this illness came back, and that's what eventually cost him his life in 2009. Was just 50 years old. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very sad, man. And Mick Harvey, he wrote something about it where he indicated that, a lot of times when people have these illnesses, they are anticipating death, if they're in pain and all this sort of stuff. But Roland really wanted to live. Like things were looking up for him. He wanted to look into the future. He wanted to live, but he just was in too poor of health. And that's what makes it even more tragic, and
Yeah.
even the documentary, Autoluminescence is like, it's almost like this, this landmark, they made that film, I feel like, trying to capture some sort of legacy for him, because there was this understanding that he didn't have much time to live.
Yeah. Oh man, it's like it must be so hard when you know that it's like your time has come, and he at that point he was happy, and he was said like, I never wrote from a miserable point. Like I love life. Life is sad, the world is sad, but I love life. And so he wrote the saddest songs because they were just feelings. But eventually, like in the end, he loved his life and he wanted to go on, but like there was this limit to it. And yeah, and the pop crime has this feel of looking back at everything he did. And I mean, what he can look back at, he was a person that was incredibly loved, not only by his fans, but they had like these associates in like all these bands that speak in the highest praise of him, and that he will eternally be missed. And I'm a member of a group and on Facebook in the dedication to Rowland S. Howard, the Crowned in Black Post Memorial of the Immortal Soul of Rowland S. Howard group. And it's people in there share their love for him all the time. And I'm so glad that I found Rowland S. Howard and his music, because he's really important to me. And yeah, I'm thankful for what he did to this world with his music.
Yeah, and the movie, man, I rewatched this recently because to get ready for this episode, and it's such like a heavy thing, man, when someone's gone and you're watching footage of them being interviewed, and that like the final scenes in the documentary, just like there's a camera on him, and you're thinking,
Yeah.
did he think it? What were his thoughts? Like, did he? Did he have thoughts that he was going to be passing soon? Like, like life is running out, and I'm not going to be around for much longer. And you think about all of that stuff, man, and the personality and the thoughts and the dreams and the vision is all gone. And it's such a heavy thing. Not to get morbid, but that's just some of the feelings I had when I watched it this most recent time.
Yeah, I rewatched it again earlier today, and I'm unapologetically, I had tears in my eyes because it's so touching. And I have a perfect quote to end this episode, but I don't want to use it now because I want to talk about favorite records and favorite songs before that. But remind me later on to finish off this episode with this amazing quote by Rowland S. Howard. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, there's a lot to choose from here. But I'm gonna go and say, starting with Pop Crimes. I Know a Girl Named Johnny is one of the great songs. It's like an interesting lyrical exploration. I would say from the Birthday Party, Deep in the Woods is one of my favorite songs. That was probably the song that hooked me the most with the Birthday Party, was that song, the guitar playing and just the evil sort of subject matter. Shamed from Crime in the City Solution, one of my favorites. And Shivers, because the lyrics in that are amazing. And it wasn't until I really heard Roland singing it that it moved into being one of my favorite songs, because the Nick Cave version is fine, but I don't even think Nick Cave was at his full powers when he sang that song, but with Rowland S. Howard's vocals, I think that song was pretty great,
Yeah. My favorite songs, Six Bell Chime, Crime in the City Solution, and Right Man, Wrong Man, the same record. For Birthday Party, it's Release the Bats, Fears of Gun, and Nick the Stripper. For These Immortal Souls, it's I Ate the Knife, Hide, Marry Me, and Crowned. Boys Next Door, Shivers, and Roman. His solo stuff, like you said, I Know a Girl Named Johnny, Autoluminescent, which is the title of the documentary, Breakdown, and Pop Crimes, the song.
Actually, I want to add one more song for his solo off of Pop Crimes. There's a song, Shut Me Down.
Yes.
Which is like,
Yep.
Man, at the time that record came out, I wasn't even particularly sad, when that record came out. But I remember, my life wasn't that bad. It's, things were pretty stable for me, and, it wasn't horrible. And I hadn't really gone through anything that was, heartbreaking or anything particularly at that time. But that song, Shut Me Down, was like so heavy and just so emotional. It was like very, very moving. And that's, Yeah, those two off of Pop Crimes I think are great.
Yeah. That song is like, I forgot this is my list here too. Yeah, it's just so sad, and it's about like when he like I forgot the girl's name. She was also in These Immortal Souls, and they were a couple, and then he moved away, and they kind of like they broke up, and then he wrote this song for her, and it's so sad. And the way he sings this, "I miss you so much." This is it's yeah, and we all felt this feeling of loss, the losing someone, but it never sounded as good as the way he sings this one sentence. Yeah.
Because it's such an obvious thing to say, but he puts it in this song, and it's so stark, you know. And like I was saying, I was okay. Like when I bought that record, my life was actually pretty decent, and but he's able to conjure this black cloud over and rain on you, you know, and it's like it was such a great indicator, you know, that he was an incredible songwriter.
Yeah. Unbelievable. What a genius, man. 50 years old. What a shame.
Yeah. You know. So what's this quote that you had in mind?
All right. So yeah, everybody, thanks for listening. I want to end this episode with a quote from the script because he wrote 2 novels, and I think they've never been published. But one is called Cetricide. And I found this quote from the book, and I think it sums up the feelings that we just uttered about him being gone and the way he is missed. And it goes like this. In a heartbeat, the sky goes out. In another, they're all gone. Angels and all. I feel a shadow fall over me, but my eyes can no longer open. As I stare up into the vacant blue, there's no weather, and I realize that for the first time now, I am only in dream.
Yeah, that's heavy, man. It's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. On that note, everyone have a nice day, and
enjoy the sunshine. Dude, now everybody out there, please listen to more material involving Rowland S Howard. He deserves to be praised more, and more people should know about him. Same goes for Jeffrey Lee Pierce and all the other people we mentioned in this podcast, but he's an outstanding artist, and only love for Rowland S Howard.
Now, just to bring things up a little bit, I wanted to mention something. The there's a couple of film credits that are mentioned with him in addition to Wings of Desire. So one of them, well, I'll read them off. There's another film called In Too Deep that came out in 1990. I don't know what he did in that movie, but he's got a film credit. Okay. And then there's the 2002 Queen of the Damned. Have you ever seen that movie?
What? No.
Queen of the Damned, 2002. All right. Now,
No.
It's a horror film. It's like connected to some kind of vampire Lestat, Anne Rice kind of thing. Which, as much as I want to like the Anne Rice novels, I never got into Lestat. You know what I mean? I don't know about you, but it was never my thing. But so I ended up renting Queen of the Damned last night, and I made it about 10 minutes into the movie, man. It was like there's this vampire who's grown tired, grown weary of living, right, of immortality. So he goes into this like deep sleep, and hoping that would be death-like, that would escape his existence somehow. And he's in New Orleans, okay, this very very Anne Rice location, and he hears this new metal band playing out of his fucking slumber, his the aeon long slumber that he's in. He hears a new metal band playing, and he's like, it awakens him, and he fucking rolls up on their band practice, and he turns them all into vampires, and he becomes the singer of the band.
No.
Yeah.
Oh wow!
I'm probably going to finish watching this at some point this weekend, but
Wow.
I was getting tired last night, and I'm like, man, I'm not going to stay awake any longer to watch this, but I'm probably going to end up finishing it just because it's such a preposterous like idea for a movie. So anyone out there, if you've seen this movie, please like chime in on your thoughts on this because I will finish watching it this weekend.
Oh man, imagine you sleep for eons and then you wake up to like.
But he found it palatable, like it was something he was into. He was like, oh, you know, like the sound of music of the spheres, you know, and the score,
man.
like the soundtrack has like Static X and the Deftones and you know all this stuff in there. So I don't know how Rowland Howard's involved. Maybe he plays a vampire or something. I don't know.
Yeah, well, he doesn't have to dress up. He just like snatches a cape and then he's good to go.
Yeah.
He's pale and skinny and has wrinkle under his eyes. So, yeah.
I can't imagine his music being in the film though, with all this other stuff going on. But maybe he's like in the background or something like that.
Yeah, maybe it's a featured performance of Limp Bizkit featuring Rowland S Howard doing like a new metal cover of Shivers.
Oh no, man! Can you imagine Fred Durst trying to sing Shivers?
I mean, he's sang Behind Blue Eyes, dude. He's got the blues, so maybe. No, man. Yeah. No, please, no.
Well, thanks for listening, everyone, and hope you had fun, and we'll talk to you next time.
Well, so long, baby. I've had enough. I can't ignore it. I miss you so much. I miss you so much. I miss you so much. I'm standing in a suit as ragged as my nerves, and I agree what I've become is surely worth the hatred that you spent on me. The stars above me, the night so deep that I could trip or drown, and still I see that you would dearly love to shut me down. Well, so long, soldier. We're deep in Dutch. I can't ignore it. I miss you so much. I miss you so much. I miss you so. I'm standing in a suit as ragged as my nerves, and I agree what I've become is surely worth the hatred that you spent on me. The sky above the night so deep that I could trip and drown, and still I see that you would dearly love to shut me down. I miss you so much. I miss you so much. I miss you so